Alright, to graph this one, certainly helps if you are familiar with the transformation rules now. I know that this graph is going to look like the cosine graph because it says cosine. It's still going to have an amplitude of 1. It's still going to have an amplitude of 2 pi. I'm not adding or subtracting anything at the front or the end, so I know it's not being shifted up or down. The only difference between this one and its parent function, y equals cosine of x, is this minus pi over 2 on x, which is going to shift it right pi over 2, because it shifts it c over b. This is c, this is b, but pi over 2 divided by 1 is just going to be pi over 2. And it's right because this is subtract, just like your algebra rules from algebra 2. So I would personally go ahead and just graph the parent function first. Call this -1, +1. I know what the cosine graph looks like, so I can throw it in here pretty quick. But you can make a table, plug in some unit circle values. If you don't have it memorized. And then I can just say, well, wait, all right, the only difference with the graph I actually want is I want it to be shifted right pi over 2. So look at the graph, figure out how much space is pi over 2. If this is 0 and this is pi over 2, looks like 2 tick marks on the x-axis is shifting right pi over 2. So like I could take this point, shift it over, this point right pi over 2, this point right pi over 2, this point right pi over 2, and this point, shift this point over and this point over, and you can just do that with every single point that you can see. And then you have to kind of use a little bit of the pattern here. Since I didn't graph more points here, I can't just move the points over, but I can see it looks like that. So this, I guess I really need to name these. I'm going to call this f of x, and I'll call this g of x. Anytime you have more than one graph down, you need to make sure you're identifying which one is which. Don't assume the person's going to figure it out for you. But that's all I would do. I would graph this, or know how to graph this. I would know this is right pi over 2, and I would just shift it right pi over 2.